Hello, everyone. I'm Colin Tessier of WrestleZone.com here to talk about the return of Ring of Honor television. Ring of Honor is back with Ring of Honor returned on HonorClub last night on March 2nd. We're here to talk all about it. 1 year to the day that Tony Khan announced that he bought Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor back with a very exciting new era of television here. Long overdue, perhaps. Obviously, I think a lot of Ring of Honor fans, myself included, have been hoping that there would be some kind of weekly show long before this. And Tony Khan, the owner, decided to, or when he talked about it all the time, he was trying to find some other way to get it back on TV, and this is what we're gonna get for now. Hopefully, maybe we'll get some sort of streaming service eventually. But Honor Club, gotta love it, back just the way it used to be in some ways. So we're gonna talk about definitely a very exciting show, a long show, 2 hours of Ring of Honor television here. I probably won't go beat by beat for the whole thing. It was a long show, a lot to break down, obviously, but I guess I'll start with some overall thoughts. So you could tell, even if you're just following along on Twitter, it looked great. It's Ring of Honor with a lot of exciting new presentation. It's a lot like AEW Dark in some ways, and obviously there's some overlap inherently with Tony Khan being the owner. But I think it's a really good look for Ring of Honor. It's exciting. It's like it feels new and fresh, and I like it. It feels better. I don't want to bury the previous era, but like it feels like there's more of a backing now. It feels a little more legit. It seems like a more not like professional, but it seems like a more high budget show. Maybe that stood out to me at first. The new logo, the lighting, the arena. Now they are taping, or at least they taped the first 2 episodes, I believe, at Universal Studios in Florida. That's where AEW Dark has been taped as well. Since there is overlap there as well, the kind of the general setup. Ideally, maybe someday they'll tape it at other arenas, or maybe they'll play with some different formatting there. But if you can't really ask for much more than what we got here in the first episode, Universal Studios. It does bring up an interesting point. This was taped. Now, for me, I did see some of the spoilers, both the literal spoiler posts, and people were talking about it on Twitter before the show aired. And that's not ideal. I think ideally you're going to have a live show. I don't know if that's necessarily feasible right now with Ring of Honor. I mean, it took them this long to get back on TV, and TV being Honor Club in the first place. And I think that's kind of the nature of the business. Hi, Nesha. Good to see you. I know it's been a while. Things have definitely changed around a lot. The work is very, very busy these days. So unfortunately, I've not been able to do as much on the podcasting side. But here I am. I wanted to come on and talk about the return of Ring of Honor. This is going to be a weekly show. I definitely want to make it an effort to do that because I'm a big fan of Ring of Honor. I always have been. I was really bummed out after Final Battle when they went on hiatus. I was excited when Tony Khan bought it. And again, it took this long to get it back on TV. So it's a big deal. I'm very, very excited about it. And feeling pretty fired up about the first episode. So Mick Thomason asked when it's going to air. It aired on Honor Club. It aired on March 2nd. That was Thursday night. That's going to be the new weekly slot for Ring of Honor Wrestling here, at least for the time being. And I was saying a minute ago that that's not necessarily ideal, having the show be behind this. You have to pay to watch it, and it's just on Honor Club. And for some fans, if you're not a fan of Ring of Honor, you may not go check that out. Whereas, I mean, I've been hoping myself someday we're going to get an AEW streaming service to kind of lump it together. I don't know how realistic it would be if we want Ring of Honor to be on TV, literal TV. But I'm really thinking that streaming service could be a good kind of compromise. Whereas I'm not trying to knock Honor Club or that choice, but it's like that feels like you're kind of maybe undercutting yourself a little bit because you're asking people to come in to pay to just watch the show. And granted, they have this great library, but unfortunately, it's not going to air on TV in the literal sense. It's going to be on Honor Club for now. It airs kind of premieres live, and then it's available on demand. And again, I'm not trying to sound frustrated. It's great to have it back in the first place, and this is only literally the first week. I think I and many other fans are hopeful that if this goes well, if the pay-per-views do well, maybe we'll get again a streaming service or something. But for now, it's on Honor Club. We got to roll with that. As I was saying a minute ago, I was a big fan of the previous era of Ring of Honor. That was my era of Ring of Honor. I kind of watched, like, in retrospect, I watched some of the classic stuff, but the previous era was when I was watching Ring of Honor every week. The end of the Sinclair era, when you had guys like Jay Lethal and Matt Taven, and there's a lot of that era present on this week's episode as well. You had guys like Matt Taven, you had Mark Briscoe, and that definitely reminds me, before you get too far into this. Obviously, it's already a couple weeks in the rearview mirror now, but absolute tragedy when Jay Briscoe passed away in a car accident in January. Just a horrible situation. Thoughts are definitely still with his family as they're continuing to kind of navigate. His daughters were injured in the crash as well. So having Mark kind of carry on that legacy, that name for the Briscoes is very, very wonderful. And I guess the best you could ask for in a tragic situation here. So it was great to see Mark on the show. He opened the show against Slim J. He got the win. So we already seen it here. Mark Briscoe debuted on AEW Dynamite not long after Jay's passing, and then he had another match against Josh Woods as well. And it seems like he's going to be kind of part of this new Ring of Honor here. He was part of the new era with Jay after Tony Khan bought it. Now, following Jay's passing, Mark is still one half of the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions. I'm not sure what's going to happen there. Tony Khan does not say anything about it. But now we've seen Mark in singles action. If I had to guess, just purely guess, I would assume they may vacate the titles or something, because you can't have Mark necessarily defend them without Jay. And I don't know. I feel like that's most likely. We saw the OGK. We saw Red Titus and Tracy Williams when we saw Aussie Open as well. I don't know how much they're going to be featured. I think they have some New Japan dates coming up as well. But if I had to guess, we might get a new Champions crown at Supercard of Honor, the pay-per-view. That will be on March 31st, the Friday of WrestleMania weekend. So if I had to guess, that's probably my prediction for that. I could definitely see Mark Briscoe challenging for a singles title, maybe facing Samoa Joe. We'll talk about the world title scene in a couple minutes here, because we got definitely in an interesting direction there as well. But I could definitely see Mark Briscoe maybe going up against Samoa Joe, the TV champion, and that being a big match for the pay-per-view. So like I said, we started off with Mark beating Slim J of the Trustbusters. That was one of those matches where could have probably predicted that. Then we heard from Tony Deppen, guy that I've had the privilege of interviewing here, former Ring of Honor TV champion and tag team champion. He called out Samoa Joe. Speaking of Samoa Joe, he declared his intention of challenging for the title. I don't think they announced that for next week. We will see Samoa Joe in action, they said, next week. So looking forward to seeing Samoa Joe in action, and potentially if it's Mark Briscoe or someone else. And I'm a big fan of Tony Deppen. He's doing great stuff on the independent scene. Big fan of his work with GCW. Again, I've been enjoying seeing him on AEW Dark as well. So definitely happy to see him back in this new era of Ring of Honor. And I mentioned a minute ago, we had the Kingdom. I said the OGK. We had the Kingdom, Matt Taven and Mike Bennett. They picked up a win and a good match against the Infantry. Not very familiar with the Infantry, but I liked what I saw here. But this definitely felt like a way to really establish the Kingdom, or reestablish them in this new era of Ring of Honor. If I remember correctly, I think they lost the Top Flight at Final Battle. So this was a good way to kind of, again, reestablish them. If I had to predict, I would assume the Kingdom, maybe Aussie Open, and a couple other teams that you got there. But if I had to really predict, I'm thinking the Kingdom might get the tag titles, given Jay Briscoe passing away. And if that's the pay-per-view or not, I don't know. Now, obviously, Ring of Honor is definitely known for its relationships with other companies, and Tony Khan had said, or at least very much implied, that he hoped to have Ring of Honor continue working with New Japan. Obviously, AEW and New Japan work together. We saw some New Japan representation here. We had Zack Sabre Jr. defending the New Japan World Television Championship against Blake Christian. Blake, another guy, like I was saying about Tony Deppen, big fan of his work with GCW and the Independents. He's been on AEW Dark and a little bit on the AEW TV here and there. But he's also involved with the new era of Ring of Honor. This was a good match with Zack Sabre. Zack retains. He's most likely not going to have the New Japan guy lose the title on the Ring of Honor show, at least at this juncture. But a good match, and I think having these kind of interpromotional matches, or the New Japan crossover, definitely a good way to kind of to lean into that. I think that's one thing AEW does very well, and it's the same ownership essentially. So I feel like that's a good way to kind of lean into that success and do it in a separate way for Ring of Honor. The Ring of Honor has worked with New Japan before, and to see that kind of coming back into fruition here is very exciting as well. I'm hoping to see more of it. Whether that means I don't know if it's more matches from Zack Sabre, more matches from more talent from New Japan Strong, anything like that. But definitely glad to see Zack Sabre here because I think that adds some legitimacy or just a little even more excitement to the show here. So I hope we see more of this New Japan crossover there. Now, I'll say my match of the night here definitely was Konosuke Takeshita defeating Josh Woods. Josh Woods, former Ring of Honor Pure Champion. Takeshita having a breakout run here with AEW in recent months. He signed with AEW. Now we're seeing him in this at least the premiere episode of Ring of Honor. Really, really good match. I would recommend, of all the matches on the show, I would recommend going out of your way to watch this one because Takeshita's great. I really think Josh Wood is very underrated. He's been with AEW since, I guess, not long after. I think it was right around this time last year. I know he started doing some dark taping and stuff like that, and then he's been on TV. He's with the Varsity Athletes with Tony Nese. So I'm hoping to see more of him in this new Ring of Honor because he's been with AEW, but I think he could really have a good run here in Ring of Honor because he already had he was definitely one of the top guys, or at least one of the top kind of up-and-coming prospects in a lot of ways in the previous era, and then he became the Pure Champion. So big fan of his. Got to see him here. So he was part of the previous era. Going further back, we also saw Christopher Daniels, the Fallen Angel, a guy that's been with that dates back to Ring of Honor since the way beginning. Christopher Daniels, the ageless wonder. The guy does not age. Great to see him here in Ring of Honor. He hasn't been doing a whole lot of AEW, so maybe even more excited to see him in the new Ring of Honor. He faced Rohit Raju, former Impact Wrestling X-Division champion. Daniels got the win in a good match. I'm curious to see. Daniels definitely a guy, given his legitimacy, I could see him maybe challenging whether if it's Claudio or if it's definitely could see him facing Samoa Joe. He has that kind of inherent name value and respect, and I hope just like I was saying about Josh Woods, there are a couple of guys here I'm they haven't been doing much in AEW, and I'm really excited about what they could be doing here in Ring of Honor. Daniel's definitely at the top of that list. A lot of respect for Christopher Daniels, what he's done at this point. Especially looking at this unofficial roster for Ring of Honor at this point, definitely one of the kind of inherently he's one of the elder statesmen, but also one of the phases of it, given his long run and association with Ring of Honor. So very much excited to see that. Two more guys from the previous era of Ring of Honor, Titus and Tracy Williams, were backstage. I like these guys a lot. They're part of the foundation. They made it clear that they're going to be teaming up here, and they were confronted by Aussie Open, one of the most buzzworthy tag teams in the wrestling world today. They've had a great run with New Japan Strong, all over the world, and they've also been on AEW the past couple weeks here. Aussie Open challenged them to a match that was pretty much set up for next week, so looking forward to seeing that. And I was saying a minute ago, I'm assuming the Kingdom's going to be probably at the top of the contention for the tag titles. Again, Aussie Open, I would think, on paper, I would think so, because I was listening to their accolades. They wrestled all over the world, a lot of buzz there. But I'm pretty sure they have some dates with New Japan coming up here, so I'm thinking they might be doing these tapings, and then they might not be as involved going forward. Could be wrong. That's my kind of general prediction. But this could be a good way to kind of again reestablish Red Titus and Tracy Williams. They were the former Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions. Tracy Williams, former TV champion. Red Titus, a guy that's been involved with the company for a long time. Former TV champion with Red Titus as well. So. Big fan of both those guys. Again, I'm a big fan of the previous era, so I was really happy to see a lot of these guys again being involved here with the new era of Ring of Honor, at least based on this one episode. I don't know how much we're going to see these guys going forward, but I like the leading into the previous era because again, those are my guys. So I was very happy to see that. The main event was Claudio Castagnoli defending against AR Fox. We heard from both guys ahead of that match. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but we got some more stuff to talk about here. We had the Embassy, the Ring of Honor 6-man tag team champions, Brian Cage, Khan, and Toa Iona. They beat Joe Keys, LSG, and Rex Lawless. Joe Keys and LSG, two names that should be familiar for people that have been watching Ring of Honor for let's say before the previous era ended. They were involved with the end of that era. Joe Keys came up in the dojo system. I think LSG did as well, but at least he was the guy who was definitely working there a lot as well. The Embassy came together Jeff before Dishonor last year, and they won the titles, I believe, at Final Battle by beating Dalton Castle and the boys. We heard we're going to see Dalton Castle next week. I'm curious to see what other kind of 6-man teams we're going to get here. I should say 3-man teams, I should say, 4-6-man titles. None really stand out right now. Obviously, we have the embassy, we have Dalton Castle and the boys. If they want to get the foundation back together somehow, I don't know. Obviously, John Gresham not really involved at this point. Fortunately, he's doing great things over in Impact Wrestling. We got the Trustbusters, and I guess that'd be a good option as well. But I think one of the downsides of having the trios titles, that we saw at the end of the previous era of Ring of Honor, it's hard to have a lot of depth. Like, you need three-man teams, you need to build them up. So I'm hoping that we get some more contenders here, and maybe we're going to see that play out over the next couple of weeks here. I mentioned the Trustbusters. We saw Ari Daivari defeat Metalik, formerly known as Grand Metalik in WWE. He's been wrestling on AEW Dark here and there, and doing some stuff with New Japan Strong as well. Daivari got the win. This is one that was pretty surprising for me. I know Daivari's been signed with AEW, and he's been involved with Ring of Honor. I guess I was kind of expecting Metalik to win, but the Trustbusters helped him win that one. So big win for Daivari. Made me curious to see maybe he could be kind of one of the featured guys here in the new Ring of Honor, or I should say the Trustbusters themselves. I know a lot of people haven't been so high on the Trustbusters. I'm a big fan of. I'm not a big fan. I like the act. I think it's got a lot of potential. So I'm glad to see it in Ring of Honor. I think they were criticized for kind of getting pushed maybe a little too quickly when they formed. I think that was like roughly last summer. So I'm hopeful maybe we'll get a little more development with them, and maybe they could prove the haters wrong here in Ring of Honor. So we saw Ari Daivari win. Josh Woods unfortunately didn't get a win there, but we also saw Slim J. So it feels like they're going to be kind of whether or not they're going to be pushed or successful, it feels like they're going to be featured to an extent in this new Ring of Honor. I think that's pretty cool. So another match we got here. We got the Renegade Twins, Charlotte and Robin Renegade, taking on Madison Rain and Sky Blue. Ironically, so the Renegade Twins recently won the NWA tag titles, and this is just my read as a fan. They very, very quickly lost those titles, and they've also been popping up on AEW Dark and a couple of TV dates as well. So I feel like maybe that we could see them. We might see them sign at some point, because I was curious about the timing where they won the NWA titles. And I think it was the next week, right around something like that. They lost them very quickly, so I feel like they're at least going to be involved here, maybe more with the new Ring of Honor. Master Ray and Sky Blue got the win though. It's a good win for them. I think Master Ray, obviously, they're a very established veteran. Sky Blue has wrestled all over the independent scene. She's been working with AEW as well, so glad to see her get a win here, even in tag team action. I could definitely see her getting built up to challenge Athena at some point. We did hear from Athena after Willow Nightingale defeated Lady Frost. I thought that was a very good match. Willow's great. She just has such a positive vibe. Big fan of hers. Glad to see her back in the new Ring of Honor. She was involved with the previous era, with the Quest for Gold tournament, and she's been involved with the pay-per-views as well here since Tony Khan bought it. Good win for Willow. She challenged Athena to a match. Athena came out and accepted that. That match we are going to see next week, so looking forward to seeing that. That one is a match that I've been kind of assuming we'd get at some point. I think that's kind of been in my mind. They've been on the collision course since Final Battle. That's when Athena won the title, and Willow got a win there as well. So I think it's good that we're finally going to get that match. And I'm surprised it's next week, actually, when they made the announcement of we got Supercard of Honor on March 31st. I know Athena's been kind of feuding with Yuka Sakazaki on AEW Dark, so that might be the match. But I thought, given Willow's kind of prominence in Ring of Honor, I thought that might be the pay-per-view match. But we're going to wait and see what happens, depending how it goes next week. Now, we also heard from Wheeler Yuta, the Pure Champion. Now, Wheeler, he's been teasing kind of a heel turn here on AEW TV alongside Claudio Castagnoli. I'm curious how much they differentiate between Ring of Honor and AEW with the storytelling and the matches, because they're kind of presented as faces here, but they were little teases of a heel turn as well. So Wheeler took issue with Ian Riccaboni, the voice of Ring of Honor. He was doing interviews as well here for the show. So Ian Riccaboni introduced him or referred to him as the junior member of the Blackpool Combat Club, which also includes Bryan Danielson, Jon Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli. And Willow took issue with that. He got a little heated up about that. He said he's not a junior member. He referenced kind of vaguely, at least, kind of the dojo system in New Japan. Maybe curious if we're going to see him face anyone there at some point soon. But he did issue an open challenge, and Timothy Thatcher accepted. Timothy Thatcher we saw recently face Bryan Danielson on AEW TV. This might be just a one-off. I think it's going to be a very good match. Thatcher, very tough, physical, brutal, hard-hitting kind of guy. We saw in that match with Danielson especially. So I think that'll be a match with Willow Yuta. And that was confirmed for next week as well. So we know we're going to get Willow challenging Athena for the women's title, and we're going to see Yuta defending the title against Timothy Thatcher. Looking forward to seeing that. Again, another match for it. I'm curious. So we're getting that next week. Supercard of Honor right around the corner. I'm curious. I know they had the tape. It was double taping last weekend. I'm not sure if they're going to do another taping or not before the pay-per-view. The pay-per-view again. So that's only a couple weeks away. So I'm curious to see what happens there. But we're going to see Willow Yuta face Timothy Thatcher next week. And the main event, we had Claudio Castagnoli defending the title against AR Fox. AR Fox definitely, as they've heard during the commentary, one of the best kept secrets in the business. Admittedly, he's a guy that I was not very familiar with before he came to AEW. And he started appearing on AEW Dark. Then he's been more featured on AEW television as well, at least here and there. He faced Samoa Joe. He's been a couple, and he also had a couple matches against the Elite, and they were in the Trios Royale. This was definitely a good kind of way, at least for me, to see, oh, this is AR Fox. Like, not to say, like, oh, this is why this guy's so hyped up, but like, he's a guy I've heard a lot about and just haven't heard all that much about, really. But this was definitely a good showing for him. Big fan of Claudio Castagnoli. And again, kind of like Willow Yuta, we saw a little aggression from Claudio, and they're kind of like riding the fine line of like, oh, is he being aggressive? And then at one point, he like made a reversal, and it looked like he got like he hit Fox's knee, but then Caprice Coleman said that it looked like he got maybe a little more because it was like an elbow kind of into like the groin region or so, and that's how Fox sold it. So I feel like they're kind of leading a little into the tease of a heel turn, at least for Claudio and Yuta here. And I'm curious to see how that would unfold potentially. But we did see Claudio get the win here. Very good match here. He got the win with a brutal European uppercut out of nowhere. Those uppercuts for Claudio are always brutal. But after that, so this is one of those things where the show is taped. I heard people talking about it beforehand, but even still seeing it, I was very excited because I'm a big fan of Eddie Kingston. So Wednesday Night Dynamite, the show ends. Eddie Kingston was brawling with Ortiz during the Face of the Revolution ladder match. After the show, he had a digital exclusive, and he said, I quit AEW. He walked away. Now, I think he'd already been advertised for the Ring of Honor episode on Thursday night, so you could, kind of connect the dots, like, oh, he's going to go to Ring of Honor. Again, they're owned by the same ownership, so it just went from one company to the other. So Claudio retains. Eddie Kingston comes out, and he says he's a 1099 contractor, so he can be here. That line popped me. I thought it was very funny. I'm a freelance writer, so I was like, I respect it. I dig it. Big fan of Eddie. I think Eddie's great. Now, Eddie and Claudio have a lot of history, and that's it. Like, it predates my fandom in a lot of ways, or at least like I watched WWE when I was a kid. I wasn't following the independent scenes closely, so I got to kind of look into that. But there's a lot of history. We saw some of the history last year in AEW. Eddie and Claudio were part of the same team for the Blood and Guts match, and it was very clear that Eddie did not like Claudio, but they would have kind of agreed to put their differences aside and get along. Eddie said that Eddie told Jon Moxley he would not beat Claudio up in AEW, but as he told him on the show last night, he said, "This is not AEW. Come for the title." And folks, that is a bit, like, I'm assuming this is the direction. That's a big match for Supercard of Honor. Like, that is I'm here for it. I'm really excited for the match. I'm curious to see what happens next week. Assuming we're going to get follow up with a promo or something. Again, I'm hopeful we're going to get some kind of. I don't know if they're going to do another taping, but maybe they're going to hype this one up on AEW TV, because I think this could be a great storyline. And that, like, again, assuming that's the direction, that's a big match for Supercard of Honor. I'm really excited about that. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was a very solid episode for the return of ROH TV. It did feel a lot like AEW Dark in some ways. It was just matches, some interviews, and that was really it. We have the show closing segment with Eddie Kingston here. That was pretty brief. So I hope. Maybe it's naive. I would like to see a little more storytelling. I mean, I think the previous Ring of Honor wasn't necessarily known for storytelling the same way like maybe an Impact Wrestling with like gimmicks and characters and things like that. But this did feel a little. I like more of a mix, like whether it's more promos or interviews or angles, or this was just matches with a couple of interviews sprinkled in. Granted, I really like that closing angle, but I think that'd be my one criticism of let's have a little more storytelling here to kind of build these stories and feuds, because it's great to have great matches, but I want stories that I can really kind of sink my teeth into and resonate with. So I was happy with that. Like I said, I liked being able to see a lot of these names from the previous era of Ring of Honor. I like seeing the Zack Sabre Jr. defend the New Japan TV title, seeing the Kingdom back, Mark Briscoe, Tony Deppen. Very happy to see all those guys. I thought Konosuke Takeshita and Josh Woods had a great match. Good to see guy Christopher Daniels. They had an international talent like Aussie Open. We had great touch, Claudio Castagnoli. We had the women's tag match, and then we have Will Nightingale. And they did set up some stuff for next week, but again, ideally maybe they'll find a little more of a balance there of the good matches and also some good storytelling, where this would skew a little more heavy towards just good matches. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm always here for having good matches, but I would prefer to have some good storytelling as well. Did want to definitely give a big shout out to Ian Riccaboni and Caprice Coleman. Huge fan of both those guys. I've had the privilege of interviewing them for WrestleZone before. Ian seems like such a good guy. Whether it's on commentary alone or I've gotten to speak with him, seems like a great guy. Caprice as well. And honestly, I'm not even blowing smoke. They are. I would name them as probably one of my very favorite commentary teams in wrestling. And Ian specifically, I'm a huge fan of him individually, and I was really like his work. I was very, very, very glad to see him and Caprice working with AEW throughout last year, and to have them call the Ring of Honor pay-per-views. Now they're back for the TV show. So big fan of both those guys. Very, very glad that we're going to get to hear them on a weekly basis again. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty strong first episode. Definitely some room for improvement, but I think the production quality looks good. The matches are good. I'm excited about this roster. I'm excited about the apparent direction of where we're going with Claudio and Eddie. Willow and Athena, we're going to have a match with them next week. Yuta defending the title against Timothy Thatcher next week. Again, Supercard of Honor is right around the corner, so I'm curious to see where we stand kind of coming out of next week. Supercard of Honor is interesting. Real quick here, Tony Khan on the media call ahead of Revolution yesterday said that basically he wanted, and he already has, less than kind of the crossover of AEW and Ring of Honor. Without the Ring of Honor show throughout 2022, there's a lot of crossover, Ring of Honor title matches. They're trying to kind of keep the brand alive, and they're trying to hype the pay-per-views. Now that Ring of Honor has a show again, it's a pretty fair kind of pivot to say, okay, we're going to try and keep them separate. He said he quote unquote didn't want to cross the streams as much. I think that's very understandable, and I'm biased and a fan of Ring of Honor, so whenever I'd be watching AEW and there'd be a Ring of Honor title match, I'd be like, cool, great, I'm excited to see it. I know a lot of people, maybe the balance was way off, where it's like there's too much, or it felt like there's too much Ring of Honor on AEW TV. But with that in mind, if they're trying to lessen that crossover, I'm very interested to see where we stand coming out of Supercard of Honor, because right now Claudio is the Ring of Honor champion, Samoa Joe is the TV champion, and some of these other talents often or regularly compete on AEW TV as well. So it makes me wonder, are we going to see Claudio lose the title so he can kind of go back to AEW, or we're going to see Will Yuta kind of same thing there, and Samoa Joe as well. Kind of three kind of big question marks there. Are they going to? And right now, Samoa Joe is the TNT champion on AEW. He has a title match Sunday at Revolution. Is he going to lose there and then shift more primarily into Ring of Honor? It's just interesting to me because having a guy like Claudio, a guy like Samoa Joe, would you really want to kind of limit them or limit your use of them to say, I only want to use them for Ring of Honor? It's the same ownership. So I'm curious to see, based on what happens, what Tony Khan's philosophy about that is. Because again, to me, if I'm a booker and I have Claudio, Castagnoli, Samoa Joe, and some of these other very, very talented people, that's a hard sell to be like, oh, I'm only going to use them for Ring of Honor, whereas you can use them for AEW and then make AEW better, and vice versa to an extent. And again, I can imagine maybe he doesn't want to use some of the top AEW or really like top AEW talent as much for Ring of Honor. But we've seen some of these guys so far be very much like hybrids for Ring of Honor and AEW of Claudio, Samoa Joe, and Wheeler. So that's one of my big question marks going forward here. How much crossover are we going to see? And especially with the titles. And again, Supercard of Honor could definitely. We started a new era last night. I feel like Supercard of Honor could really be a big, a new era beginning, because again, we're going to see this title matches presumably, and maybe even some changes. And again, maybe that would free up Claudio to go back to AEW full time, or if we see Samoa Joe lose the Revolution, a lot of question marks to play. I'm looking forward to seeing how it all shakes out. Now, I did want to talk about AEW Revolution more. I think instead I'm going to do a Revolution preview show on Sunday, so stay tuned for more information about that. Obviously, Revolution Sunday night, 8 p.m. pre-show, or the buy-in at 7, so it'll probably be at some point on Sunday night. Well, that said, folks, I want to thank you so much for tuning in to talk about this new era of Ring of Honor. I'm excited about it. I hope you are as well. So we're going to be doing this show weekly on Friday mornings. I think 10 o'clock's a good time. So you kind of, put that's in pencil. Obviously, the card is subject to change, but always enjoy doing the show here. And I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all of our interviews. Bill Pritchard interviewed the AEW Tag Team Champions, the Guns. We also have interviews in our archives with Willow Will. And now, like I said, I've had the opportunity to interview guys like Ian McAbani and a bunch of names on the Ring of Honor roster. So make sure to check that out. It's on our Facebook page or YouTube, all that good stuff. Follow us on Twitter. Follow what we do on the news site as well. With that, folks, thank you so much for listening. And remember to sit back, relax, and enjoy wrestling.